Hey guys, we're going to continue our conversation on evolution where we left off last time, just talking about Darwin's voyage and how he collected all of his evidence to back up his theory. And then today we are going to basically point out the parts of his theory and the evidence that goes along with it. So, one thing we have to remember is that species are not perfect, okay, nor are they unchanging in an environment. So there is some natural variation among all organisms. Natural variation is a difference among individuals of a species, and this is found in all types of organisms. So, for zebras, we got striped organisms versus not striped organisms. We got spotted versus not spotted. So this is just a form of camouflage that can be an adaptation beneficial in an environment, and that is an example of a natural variation. And these traits can be passed on. Some other forms of natural variation is being fast versus slow, being able to climb versus flying. So again, all of these things are different types of natural variation that depending on the environment, that species could have an advantage. Okay, so these natural variations that we talk about can be appealing to humans. So there is something known as artificial selection, and that's when the natural variations that are present in species are selected by humans for their usefulness. One example of that is within fruit. So only the seeds from the best corn are replanted the next season. Or let's say only the biggest dog with the right colorings are bred for a dog show. So there's all sorts of different reasons why humans might select specific traits. Maybe with strawberries, they notice that one particular season they grew really big strawberries. They'll probably save those seeds and replant them next season to ensure that they get large strawberries again. So again, artificial selection is humans selecting traits that they think are useful and then breeding those or planting those again depending on what it is that we're talking about. There is a struggle for existence among organisms for resources. So what I'm talking about here is, the wolf that runs the fastest is going to catch more prey. This is, again, a natural variation that gives some individuals an advantage over others. So this is another way that populations of organisms are checked. They don't become out of control. Now, the more fit an organism is, the more it is able to survive and therefore reproduce. So fitness is a result of adaptations that, generally speaking, are going to be advantageous if that fitness is on a high level. Adaptations that may be not as advantageous in a particular environment are going to decrease fitness. So adaptations can be physical or behavioral characteristics. Every generation, individuals will compete for food and space. The ones that are not well suited for their environment either die or are going to produce few offspring, so their species is not going to thrive. And so we say that the fittest individuals survive to reproduce, and that is our theory, or Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest, or also known as natural selection. So we talked about artificial selection, which is humans picking out traits that they find useful. Natural selection is just what occurs in nature naturally. And if we look at natural selection over time, this is going to result in changes in the inherited characteristics of a population. These changes can increase a species' fitness in its environment. And again, I'm going to use the example with the tortoise. The ones on Pinta Island, they kind of have that mid-range neck and intermediate shell to probably allow to eat vegetation in that middle level. Isabella Island, or the dome-shaped shell, there is not much room for that neck to lift up, which means that that vegetation there is probably lower to the ground, and this particular species, it can thrive in that area because that's how the resources are available to them. And then, of course, you got the Hood Island. They have a saddle-backed shell, and the neck is very long and allowed to reach up very high for vegetation and food that they're looking for. So in each of these cases, this species' fitness is increased because of inherited characteristics passed on according to the environment that they're in. All right, so this is an example of descent with modification. Over time, natural selection produces organisms with different structures that have different niches, okay, or occupy new habitats. So that word there, niche, in particular, I want to make sure you understand what that word means. Okay, it's kind of like the role or the job that that organism plays in its environment. And only certain organisms can occupy a niche. You can't have multiple niches being occupied in the same environment. Otherwise, there's that competition or that struggle for existence that we talked about. And one's going to beat out one, and the other's going to have to find another way to survive, or they won't.